Oh.
Don't put your light on, you'll be fine.
I've never seen that, I've never seen it.
Huh.
It's not that, there's electricity, no, yeah, it doesn't zoom. I don't have to sleep over really.
Okay, being 5 o'clock, I want to thank everyone to come for this special meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 6 land, the home of the Métis, and I ask everyone to rise and the clerk to say a prayer.
O God, let us each in our own way ask your wisdom and guidance in our deliberations. Help us to incorporate into all our decisions those values which will enable us to fulfill our mission, to act as responsible stewards, and to respect and value the cultural and spiritual traditions of all the citizens of the City of Prince Albert. For this we pray. Amen.
Declaration of conflict of interest, you all know that, and I don't think there will be one in this case. And so I'll go to number 5, reports, approval of the agenda. Back up, Greg, sorry. Approval of the agenda. Councillor Miller?
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kilmer?
Thank you, Mayor. I second it.
Thank you. I'll prompt the question. No. Thanks. It's now open. Councillor Zepp? Oh, you're here.
I've almost forgotten how to vote.
Yeah. Well, it worked because we all voted, so thank you. Carried. Okay, then we read reports of administration 5.1 COVID update. Okay, we want to read 3. We got 1 done and then he jumped. Go to 2. 3. And 3. Okay. Cool. Councillor Cody?
Well, Your Worship, I will reluctantly do this, but I will move the recommendation that the safety policy for mandatory proof of COVID-19 vaccination or negative COVID-19 test applicable to civic city employees and public be removed when the government of Saskatchewan rescinds the public health order for proof of COVID-19 vaccination or negative test. Number 2, that the mandatory proof of COVID-19 vaccination or negative COVID-19 test applicable to members of the public accessing civic facilities be removed when the government of Saskatchewan rescinds the public health order for proof of COVID-19 vaccination negative test. And number 3, that the mandatory use of non-medical face masks for all indoor and outdoor city-owned facilities, including public transit, be removed when the government of Saskatchewan rescinds the public health order for mandatory isolation face covering.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Kilmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will second that.
Thank you. Discussion? If there's any. Councillor Cody?
Yeah, I moved the motion. I'm not necessarily happy with it, but I think it's necessary because I don't think there's any way around it. I think we have followed the government's lead over the course of this pandemic, albeit we did go over and above them a bit at times because we felt it was necessary to save our citizens from further harm and the like. But I believe now, if you read the legalities of this, I don't think there's much hope that we'd have to keep these in place. I worry about the liability that there'd be, and I just don't want the city to have to put up with that. And I'm not worried about the non-vaxxers. I'm not worried about those people. They're a very, very small group of people who I think are doing things that they probably in later on in history will be upset at themselves that they did. But nevertheless, having said that, I will, as I did, move the motion reluctantly, but at the same time, I think it's the only way we can do it, and that's why I've done it.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have lots to say on this, and what I want to explain is why I'm going to vote against this. And I know we've been put in a very difficult position by the provincial government. I do acknowledge that health is a provincial responsibility, and however, when this pandemic started, and when we were told to deal with it by the provincial government, however the municipality wanted. They wanted us to do. So what we did is we based our decisions on the science, on what the medical community was telling us, what the professionals were telling us. And that's why we made these restrictions, and which were really not huge restrictions, but that's why we did what we did. And so I'm going to base my decision not on politics, not on popular opinion or anything like this, but based on what the medical community is telling us. And just a week ago or so, in the Leader Post, full-page ad stated about the vaccines. And it said, contrary to what you've heard, COVID-19 vaccinations does reduce transmission. Went on to say 90% of people that are vaccinated are protected against severe illness. It said, please get vaccinated. And then its final statement was this, and this is what I think is extremely important. Vaccination is the safe way to lifting public health measures, and we're not there yet. This was signed by the Saskatchewan Medical Association, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, the Saskatchewan College of Pharmacy Professionals, the College of Registered Nurses of Saskatchewan, the College of Family Physicians of Canada, Saskatchewan chapter, and the Saskatchewan Union of Nurses. It wasn't signed by a Facebook doctor or a Google doctor. It was signed by the people in our province who deals with our safety and our health and medicine. That's who signed this. And so when they're saying to us, we're not quite there yet, I think and wish that governments of all levels would listen to what the experts are saying. What the people that have trained their entire lives for making these tough decisions. I wish we would listen to them and keep the politics out of it. But unfortunately, we're there. And so I want to remind our province that I'm voting no to not only, and I'll respect the decision of this chamber. I always have respected our decision of this chamber, other than when it comes to school bus or a bus routes. I mean, I always throw that at you guys. But anyways, but this is a very serious situation, and I will respect the decision. And once the decision is made, I will move forward and continue on. But we have vulnerable people in our province. We have over 5,000 people that are battling cancer in our province. We have 10% of our population. That's over 100,000 people that have diabetes. We have over 10% of our population that have asthma and that are being treated for asthma. These are the vulnerable people that are going to be affected by this decision. And I don't know if politicians at the provincial level have really looked at that. I don't know. They have better stats than I have. Also, I understand, yes, there has been a toll on mental health, especially mental health for our children in this province. I get that. I understand that. I would remind people that 2 years ago we had a young man that tried to raise the awareness of mental health. but he was Indigenous. And he went all the way to Regina, and he was told he was an illegal encampment, and he had to be removed from that. And he was bringing awareness to mental health. And he told us that the number one leading cause of death of 11-year-olds to 29-year-olds or whatever in the province, in the north, is suicide. So there is a mental health component. There was, and there still is. I get it. And at least the province is now addressing that, which I applaud and support. And they did pass a motion unanimously in the legislature to deal with mental health, which is, I applaud them for that. So that's a good thing. Just so in conclusion, elections have consequences, and we need to stop questioning when a government is elected, whatever level, whether it be municipal, provincial, or federal, and accept those results. And I accept the results of the provincial government. They have this right to do this. I get it. They are in charge of healthcare. They passed it on to us, and that's why I'm saying let's make our decision based on those same decisions that we made when we brought in these measures. So that, I could go on, but I'm not going to. But basically that is my position of why I'm going to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
I wasn't going to. Thank you, Your Worship. It's a very difficult decision that we face today. I'm certainly hesitant. I know that I've talked to many people in the community that have tried to say, hey, don't lift these restrictions yet. But as Councillor Cody said, we don't have a lot of choice based on legality.
Right.
And so therefore, I am going to support it based on those reasons. But I do want to point out that the end of I'm hopeful that COVID-19 is going to disappear, or we're going to be able to live with it. I am very hopeful that, the Omicron strain is weak, and the next one will be weak as well. If there is another strain, I'm sure there will be. But I do want to thank the population that went out and got vaccinated and listened to the healthcare that said, listen, the vaccination works, and that's the way we're going to move forward and get over the pandemic. And a large portion of the population went out, got vaccinated, as we were asked by our healthcare, by our doctors that said the vaccination works, and that's going to help end the pandemic. And I think there's lots of people, most people are ready to move forward, right? I'm not a mask lover, like I'm sure nobody really loves wearing masks. I don't like showing my proof of vaccination everywhere I go. There's a lot of people that are really ready to move forward. But it's not, I feel like we're close to being there to move forward. But it's because of the people that got us through the difficult strains, the harder strains of COVID-19 that helped our healthcare stay moving forward, not overwhelmed during the hardcore strains. That's what I believe. That was the purpose of the vaccination strains, or the vaccination policies, was so we don't overwhelm the healthcare. Go get vaccinated. We have to do this because not a lot of people are being vaccinated. Well, it did its part. We have 80%. But I'm still hesitant to remove these because the doctors that I talked to in person today say, hey, it's a little bit too soon. So that makes me hesitate. I'm not going to lie. It makes me hesitate when the in-person doctors, not the YouTube doctors, not the ones that are being quoted from a specific university that are no longer recognized. It's the local doctors that say, hey, Blake, we're hesitant on this. We're ready to, where we understand the people's needs that they want to move forward, but we're hesitant and it's a little bit too early. So I hope after we remove these, that it doesn't blow up. I'm hopeful for that. I know there's kids, there's adults, we're all ready to move forward and talk without having a mask on our face, but the hesitation's there. And I'm concerned, but I'm gonna support the motion. We don't have a lot of choice, and the people, I think there's many people that wanna move forward. Thank you.
I too, and then I'll go to you, Councilor Miller, will be supporting the motion. But I track it a little different way, and I really struggle with it. But I know we could never win a liability case. I know we will be targeted because we will be one of the only ones in the province that keep any restrictions if we do. But what frustrates me about the government is, so you lift the mandate. What is that going to do for over the 40,000 people that are on the waiting list for surgery? And I want the government to come clean and tell us how many people have died over the last 2 years because we couldn't get a bed because the hospital was filled with unvaccinated COVID patients. And I think that's the part that frustrates me, because COVID's still here. Our hospitals are still going to be full with COVID patients. And at some time, this government has to stand up and be accountable to us and to themselves on what are we going to do to the patients that are waiting for surgery that has done nothing wrong. That has done nothing wrong. You know, they got cancer. Nobody wants that. But some of those cancers with surgery and treatment are savable, but you couldn't get in because of COVID. And I think that's the part that frustrates me, that, and I don't know how the government's going to deal with it, but to me, you got to prioritize who gets the hospital bed. Is it the innocent person that got cancer that did nothing wrong? Or is the person that had the choice and decided not to take the right choice, or their choice? So that's who I struggle with. I struggle with the tens of thousands of people that are still waiting for surgery. I feel and pray for all the ones that have died during the process because of the government waiting for surgery. And so it is a tough decision. But I do know that, we have a small group, but that small group is very loud. They know how to push the media's button. They know how to push everyone. And that's why I always say the loud minority and the silent majority. And I too want to thank the people that got vaccinated and stepped up and did the right thing. Because at least if you get COVID, you could survive, where unvaccinated people are highly at risk. And that Omicron, don't kid yourself, we can take your life. Even though it's not as severe, if you're immune compromised, you're in trouble. And so I'm sad because they're so happy that they've announced the end, but I'm going to be challenging them the weeks to come on our conference calls. How are you going to deal with the waiting list? When are you going to stop that unfortunate part? And how are you going to catch up tens of thousands of surgeries that we need to be caught up now, not in the future? Because these people have been suffering. And that's sad. And so I hope the government is listening, and that next week they're going to step up and say, okay, now we're going to tackle the waiting lists. Now we're going to tackle the most vulnerable and start protecting them because they've done nothing wrong. Thank you. Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mayor Dion. I feel today that I have handcuffs on me and I have no other choice but to do this, which is very unfortunate. You know, I am a grandmother. I have grandbabies who are under 5 years old, can't be vaccinated. I think of them, and I also think of people who are immunocompromised, and I think of our healthcare workers every day.
Yes.
I am retired, however, my heart is still there. I think of them having to feed patients and sometimes get the use of N95s, but not always. And it's unfortunate we couldn't hear from Dr. Kachani tonight. However, I do know his employer is the provincial government also. So I guess he has rules to follow too. And thank you, Mayor Dion.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot the health workers, so thanks for bringing them up. Councillor Kilmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too have a heavy heart in making this decision and recognize that our hands are tied. But I just want to speak to all the residents who continue to do the right thing for each other and remind us that we are a very tight community, a community that does look out for each other and will continue to look out for each other. I am thankful for all the frontline workers, all the bus drivers, all the maintenance. I can go on and on with the list, the teachers, the maintenance staff in the schools, who just because we rescind this order if we do, the battle is still there. So we are not leaving people to their own demise. I feel very confident that one thing P8 is full of people who are willing to do the right thing for their neighbors and their community, and will continue to do what's right for each other. And I do want to thank everyone that got vaccinated. Thank you.
Councillor Zepp?
Thank you. I'm going to start by speaking about any concern about liability. If we as a city were to not pass this motion and instead continue with the restrictions that we currently have, are our hands tied in this situation? And there are lawyers currently speaking out in Saskatchewan publicly stating that it may be that just as these restrictions of the province did not violate the Saskatchewan Human Rights Code last month, they would not violate the Saskatchewan Human Rights Code next month. And if you want to take a look at that, CBC News has reported on that, and people can take a look at that. So my thought from reviewing all of the material are some questions. One is, how much of a risk of liability is there if we as a city continued holding these same restrictions when the province did not? And I don't think we know that yet. How likely would a successful legal action be if we were to continue these restrictions? I don't think we know that yet either. And is there any evidence that our restrictions would violate the Saskatchewan Human Rights Code? And even if even knowing the province is removing their restrictions, how much of an enhanced risk is there here? And I think those are important questions for us to think about, and not just blanket say, look, there's too much liability here for potential legal actions, and that's the basis of making this decision. And I'm concerned. I do not. It is concerning. I do not like the idea of making this decision without more to that question of that, how much risk would there be here? And as I stated, there are lawyers in Saskatchewan stating that look, there are options here that businesses and organizations can continue to implement restrictions, and there are some in Saskatchewan who are going to be continuing these restrictions even without the province continuing their own. And thinking back to the day when we as a council, when we implemented restrictions that were above and beyond what the provincial government was doing then, and even today. Our restrictions today are more than what those provincial restrictions require. And for example, libraries, for example, ticketed events that don't charge GST, those are things that we in our city, as a result of our city council decision, that are experiencing restrictions right now that the province is not doing. So we're already doing that. We're already out beyond, stretched beyond that provincial safety net. We're already there. When we made that decision as a council, it was a very solemn event. It was a very momentous decision. And we, as members of council, we did not ask to step into the issue of health. It was Dr. Chicani, the Prince Albert Medical Health Officer, who came to a city council meeting, wanted to speak, and he asked us to take action. He asked us as a city council to implement these restrictions for two reasons, for two goals. One was to prevent preventable death, to save lives. And the second was to assist so that our hospitals would not be overrun with people needing care and then being unable to assist in other ways. And as a result of that, we as a council did go above and beyond the province. And at that time, many of us made comments at council that we were concerned that the provincial government was not going to what our medical health officer needed, right? And that we were concerned about stepping into the realm of health, and that we would prefer the provincial government to be following what our Prince Albert Medical Health Officer was asking for. For today's vote, we have not heard from any medical health officers advising what we see in the motion here. And that's a concern to me. I, like many citizens that I've heard from, will be happy to see restrictions lift once the medical experts advise that the evidence supports that movement. If and when we hear from that from medical experts, that would be the time to review that evidence and take that action. I would like to say, let's end these restrictions the same way that we started them, by following the advice of our medical health officers. And in terms of public health, it is not generally our job at City Council to step into areas of public health. It was very unusual that we did so when we enacted these measures. And the reason that we did so is because Dr. Chicani came in and asked us to make these changes. And so I think that even now, today, it's still not, health is not our usual area. And it is still just as much now our job to be considering the safety of the community, just like we did the day that we enacted the measures.
Thank you. Councillor Zierakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of getting information out to the public and the residents, the Prince Albert Public Library Board met last night at their regular monthly public board meeting and reaffirmed their early decision to follow the City of Prince Albert's pandemic policies. And I wanted to tell that story to make sure the public's aware. The policies both throughout the pandemic and moving forward to present consistent conditions of entry to that facility for the residents and to the public at all, so that's consistent with the city facilities. So I wanted to share that last night at that public board meeting so that the public was informed.
Thank you. Okay, I see no lights on. I'm going to hit the button. And ready to vote. Oops, sorry. Vote is now open. Vote passes 7-2. Councillor Gilmer. Oh, uh-oh, what did I do? Go ahead, Councillor Gilmer.
I move to adjourn.
Oh, there you go. Moved by Councillor Gilmer to adjourn. Seconder? Councillor Edwards?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, the vote's now open. Thank you. Carried, we're adjourned. I just want to thank everyone for coming at such a short notice for this matter. Be safe,